I never thought staying late at school would be the thing that nearly broke me. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal. My group had a history project due Monday, and since no one wanted to meet up at someone's house, we agreed to use the library after hours on Friday. Our librarian, Mrs. Keller, was nice enough to let us stay till around 8 p.m. before she locked up. By the time my group left, I was still gathering up my notes. I told them I'd be a few minutes behind. That was mistake number one. When I finally walked out of the library, the entire hallway was nearly dark. The only light came from the yellow glow of a few emergency bulbs. My footsteps echoed across the tile floor. Sharp and lonely. I remember muttering to myself, "Great. Now I feel like I'm in a horror movie." But then I noticed something. A mop bucket sitting in the middle of the hallway. It wasn't unusual. The janitor usually worked at night. But what struck me was how much water had pooled around it, like the bucket had been left alone mid-job. I stepped carefully past it and kept walking, hugging my binder against my chest. That's when I heard it. The steady, metallic scrape of something dragging across the floor. At first, I assumed it was just the janitor. I turned the corner, expecting to see him. Instead, the hallway was empty. I froze. The sound had stopped the instant I looked. My eyes scanned the shadows, but there was nothing. "Hello?" I called out. My voice cracked. "Mr. Alvarez? You here?" That was the name of our janitor. A short, heavy-set man with a limp, always friendly, always humming while he worked. But the silence that answered me was absolute. I shook my head and told myself not to be stupid. The school at night was bound to feel creepy. I walked faster, heading toward the exit doors near the gym. That's when I saw him. At the far end of the hallway, standing perfectly still in the faint glow of a light, was the janitor. His back was turned, mop in hand, but he wasn't moving. Just standing there. Relieved, I called out, "Hey! Sorry if I scared you. Just heading out." He didn't respond. I started walking toward him, but something about the way he was holding the mop didn't look right. His shoulders were stiff, locked like someone posing for a picture. I slowed down. That's when he slowly turned his head, just enough for me to see his profile. His face was expressionless. No smile, no recognition. His eyes caught the dim light, and for a second I thought they looked glazed. I raised my hand in an awkward wave, forcing a laugh. "Okay. A good night." He didn't move. I hurried past him, keeping my eyes forward. I felt the prickling sensation of being watched, every nerve in my body screaming not to turn back. When I reached the exit doors, I shoved against them, but they didn't budge. Locked. My chest tightened. That didn't make sense. Mrs. Keller always unlocked them before she left. I tried again, jiggling the handle harder this time. Nothing. Behind me, I heard it again, that slow, deliberate scrape of the mop being dragged across the tiles. I spun around. The hallway was empty. The janitor was gone. At this point, my pulse was racing. I grabbed my phone to call my mom, but of course there was no signal in the school. My only option was to head for the main office when there was a landline there. The walk felt endless. Every door I passed looked darker than it should. Every corner felt like something was waiting just out of sight. When I finally reached the office, I almost cried with relief. The door was unlocked. I slipped inside and picked up the phone on the secretary's desk. Dead. No dial tone. That's when the faint humming started. It was distant at first, echoing through the vents, a low, steady tune. My stomach dropped. I recognized it. The janitor was always humming that same Spanish lullaby when he cleaned. Only this time it was slow. Too slow. Dragged out, distorted, like someone mocking it. I dropped the phone and bolted out of the office. I didn't care how, I just needed out. I ran through the hallways, trying every exit I could find. All of them were locked. It was like the building had sealed itself shut. And then I saw him again, standing halfway down the science wing, mop in hand, staring right at me. But something was different. He looked taller. His face seemed stretched, like his skin was pulled too tight over his skull. His eyes gleamed unnaturally in the dark, and the mop was leaving a dark streak behind it as he dragged it across the floor. I backed up slowly, my breath shallow. "Mr. Alvarez." My voice shook. "What's going on?" He tilted his head like an animal trying to mimic human curiosity. Then, without warning, he dropped the mop and ran, not limped, not shuffled, ran, impossibly fast, straight toward me. I screamed and darted into the nearest stairwell, slamming the door shut behind me. His footsteps thundered against the other side. The door shuddered but somehow held. I didn't wait. I sprinted up the stairs 2 at a time, bursting onto the second floor. My lungs burned, but adrenaline pushed me forward. That's when I saw the light coming from under one of the classroom doors. I had no choice. I ran inside, shut the door, and pressed my back against it. The room was dim, but the overhead projector was on, casting static across the wall. My heart pounded as I scanned the room. It was empty, or so I thought. On the chalkboard, written in jagged letters, were 3 words: "Don't trust him." My blood went cold. The humming started again, this time right outside the door. And then, clear as day, a voice whispered from the back of the classroom. "Hide." I spun around. There was no one there, just empty desks. The doorknob rattled violently. I dove under a desk, clapping a hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. The door creaked open. Through the slats of the desk, I saw his shoes. Heavy worn work boots. He stepped inside, dragging that mop with him again, though I never saw him pick it up. The streak it left this time was darker, thicker, almost like blood. He stopped in the center of the room. The humming cut off. The silence was suffocating. Then in a low, rasping voice, he said, "I know you're here." My whole body trembled. I didn't dare breathe. He walked between the desks, slow, deliberate, the mop scraping beside him. Each step felt closer, heavier. I shut my eyes, praying he wouldn't crouch down. After what felt like hours, the footsteps finally receded. The door creaked shut. I stayed under that desk until I couldn't take it anymore. Finally, when I was sure he was gone, I crawled out. My legs shook so badly I could barely stand. I had to get out. And then I noticed something. The chalkboard, the writing had changed. Now it said, "Behind you." I whipped around, heart slamming into my throat, and the janitor was inches from my face. His eyes were black voids. His mouth stretched impossibly wide, and the last thing I remember before everything went black was the sound of that mop hitting the floor. When I woke up, it was morning. The classroom was empty. The projector was off. No words on the board. I ran straight out of the school, not even bothering to grab my bag. On Monday, I tried to tell someone, my teacher, my friends. But when I mentioned Mr. Alvarez, they looked confused. "Who?" my teacher asked. "The janitor!" I shouted, her face darkened. There hasn't been a janitor here in years. Not since the fire in the basement. When the old custodian died, she said his name, Mr. Alvarez. I never stayed late at school again. And sometimes when I walk past the basement door, I swear I can still hear the sound of a mop dragging across the floor. I don't think people realize how much history a school building can hold. Decades of students, teachers, lockers, desks, and memories. Not all of them good. At my high school, there was one particular classroom that everyone whispered about, but no one ever went inside. Room 6B, tucked at the far end of the west wing. The blinds were always shut, the door always locked. Teachers never mentioned it, and students avoided that hallway unless they had to pass by. We just called it the forgotten classroom. I never gave it much thought, not until junior year, when detention landed me inside it. It was a Friday afternoon when I got in trouble. Nothing serious, just a smart remark in math class that pissed off Mr. Rhodes. He gave me 2 hours of detention after school. Normally, detention was held in the library or the main study hall. But when I walked in, Mrs. Dwyer, the teacher in charge that day, said something that made my stomach twist. "Room 6B, she told me without even looking up. "That's where you'll serve today." I froze. "Wait, isn't that room closed off?" She finally glanced up at me. Her expression was unreadable. "Not today, go on. Take your books," I wanted to argue, but the look in her eyes told me it wouldn't help. So I dragged myself across the school, through empty hallways that echoed with every step. By the time I reached the west wing, I already felt uneasy. The hallway smelled different here. Stale, damp, like mildew. The floor tiles were cracked and the overhead lights flickered weakly as if they were barely alive. I found the door easily. The faded number 6B was still stenciled above the frame, though half the paint had chipped away. I grabbed the handle. To my surprise, it turned easily in my hand. The door creaked open. Inside, dust swirled in a thin beam of light sneaking past the blinds. The desks were still arranged in neat rows, though they were older than the ones we used now. Half of them had scratches carved deep into the wood. The air was heavy, like the room hadn't been touched in years. I sat near the back, dropping my backpack on the floor. For the first half hour, I just scribbled aimlessly in my notebook, tapping my foot to fill the silence. But soon I started to notice things. The first was the smell. It wasn't just mildew. There was something sharper underneath, metallic, almost like iron. The second was the chalkboard. When I walked in, it had been blank. Now faint smudges appeared across the surface, as if someone had half erased something. I squinted, leaning forward. The words were faint, but I could make out, "Stay." I blinked, rubbed my eyes. When I looked again, the board was clean. My pulse quickened. I tried to distract myself by doodling in my notebook, but the silence pressed down harder than before. I kept glancing at the clock. Its second hand ticked in jerks, but it didn't move forward. It had been stuck at 3:45 for I don't know how long, and then the whispers started. Faint at first. So faint I thought it was the air vent, a low hiss like wind, but then I caught words. "Can you hear me?" I whipped around, heart pounding. The room was empty. The whispers came again, this time from the front of the class. "Sit down, don't leave." My throat went dry. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This isn't funny," I called out. "Who's there?" Silence. I was about to grab my backpack and bolt when something stopped me. The desks. They weren't the same as before. I swear to God they had shifted. At least 3 of them were angled toward me now, as if the invisible students had turned in their seats. I stumbled back, knocking into my chair. My hand fumbled for the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. I twisted harder, yanking with both hands. Nothing. And then the chalk squealed. I turned slowly. The chalkboard was writing on its own. Jagged letters etched themselves across the board one by one. "Don't look away." I staggered backward, shaking my head. "No, no, no, no." That's when I felt it. Someone breathing on the back of my neck. Hot. Heavy. Too close. I spun around, swinging my arm wildly. But there was no one there. Just empty desks. My chest heaved as I stumbled toward the window. I yanked at the blinds, desperate for light. They snapped open, flooding the room with gray evening glow. For a second, I almost believed it was over, until I saw them. Dozens of faces, pressed against the glass. Gray, blurry faces of children, their features distorted like melted wax, eyes hollow sockets. They stared in at me, lips moving soundlessly, mouthing words I couldn't hear. I screamed and stumbled back. My backpack spilled across the floor, papers scattering. The faces didn't vanish. They just kept staring, as if waiting for me to join them. The clock ticked again. 45. Still 3:45. The chalk screeched. New words appeared on the board. "You're one of us." My body went numb. My vision blurred. The whispers rose into a chorus all around me, overlapping voices calling my name. "Join us. Join us. Sit down. Don't leave!" The desk shifted again, scraping loudly across the floor until they boxed me in. I couldn't move. I collapsed to my knees, clamping my hands over my ears. The last thing I remember is the sound of the door unlocking behind me. When I woke up, I was lying in the main office. Mrs. Dwyer stood over me, frowning. "You fainted," she said. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. "The classroom," she shook her head. "Room 6B has been closed for 30 years. No one sent you there. You must have gotten lost," I tried to argue, but my voice cracked. She just looked at me with pity. The next Monday, when I worked up the nerve to walk past the West Wing again, I stopped dead. Room 6B's door was padlocked, thick chains wrapped around the handles. A faded paper was taped to it. "Do not enter, hazardous area." But here's the thing. Through the narrow gap in the blinds, I saw a desk, and on it was my notebook, open, with my name written across the top of the page. Only this time, the handwriting wasn't mine. Lockdown drills used to feel like a joke at my school. The teachers would turn off the lights, lock the door, and we'd all sit quietly for a few minutes while trying not to laugh. It was boring, sometimes a little creepy, but never serious. At least that's what I thought. Until the night everything changed. It was a Tuesday evening, late in the fall of my senior year. I stayed after school for basketball practice. We had a big tournament coming up, and Coach was pushing us harder than usual. By the time practice ended, the gym smelled like sweat and rubber soles, and we were all dead tired. Only about 10 of us were left, joking around as we gathered our things. The custodians had already mopped most of the hallways, and the rest of the school was dark. I remember feeling proud of myself for staying late, for working harder. That pride didn't last long, because at 8:13 p.m. the intercom crackled to life. Lockdown. Lockdown. This is not a drill. At first we laughed. We thought it was some glitch or maybe coach playing a prank. But then the voice repeated, harsher, distorted through static. Lockdown, this is not a drill. The laughter died. Coach's face went pale. Everyone back in the gym, he barked. Now. We scrambled back, dragging bags and water bottles. Coach locked the doors and shut off the lights. The gym fell into shadow, illuminated only by the faint red glow of the exit signs. I could hear the others breathing. No one spoke. 5 minutes passed. 10, still nothing. No footsteps, no announcement, no teachers checking in. Just silence. Must be a false alarm, one of the guys whispered. Maybe someone pulled it by accident. But if that was true, why hadn't anyone come to release us? Around the 20-minute mark, things got weirder. The intercom crackled again and we all jumped. Remain seated. Do not attempt to leave the building. The voice was different this time. Slower. Drawn out, like someone was dragging the words across broken speakers. Who is that? One of the girls whispered. Coach didn't answer. He just kept his eyes on the doors. Another 30 minutes passed. The air grew thick and stale. My legs cramped from sitting cross-legged on the gym floor. Finally, Coach stood. Stay here, he whispered. He moved to the office attached to the gym, a little room with a window that looked out into the hallway. He peeked through the blinds. His face went rigid. I'll never forget the way his jaw tightened before he yanked the blinds shut again. What did you see? One of the guys asked. Coach shook his head. Nothing. Just stay quiet. But I didn't believe him. An hour in, the first person disappeared. Her name was Erica. She sat near the bleachers, hugging her knees. 1 second she was whispering to the girl next to her, and the next, she was gone. No sound, no movement. Just gone. The girl beside her screamed, and suddenly we were all on our feet, panicking. Coach tried to calm us down, but his own voice was shaking. There has to be an explanation, he stammered. She probably slipped out when no one was looking. But we all knew that was impossible. We would have heard the doors. We would have seen her. Something had taken her. After that, no one sat near the bleachers. The whispers started next. Faint at first, curling through the air vents. My name, your name. Random words. Don't run. Let us in. No time to hide. We covered our ears, but the whispers seeped through. Some of the younger players started crying. Another 20 minutes crawled by. Then another, one by one, more students vanished. Sometimes it happened in the corner of my eye. A shadow bending strangely. Someone stepping into darkness and never stepping out. Other times it was like Erica. They were just gone. Every disappearance left the gym colder. By midnight, there were only 4 of us left. Me, Coach, and 2 others. We huddled near the center of the court. Clutching our bags like lifelines, the intercom blared again. Proceed to the nearest exit. You are safe to leave now. But the voice was wrong, it wasn't human. The words bent and cracked like broken glass, and underneath the static I swear I heard laughing. Coach grabbed his whistle, clutching it like a weapon. We're staying put, he hissed. That's when the doors began to open, not all at once. Slowly. Too slowly. The metal creaked as the double doors inched apart. Darkness poured in from the hallway, and something moved in that darkness. A shape. Tall. Thin. Wrong. We couldn't see its face, if it even had one. But it stretched impossibly high, its limbs scraping against the walls. The 2 students with us bolted. They didn't even hesitate. They sprinted for the opposite exit, slamming into it with everything they had. The doors opened. For a moment, I thought they'd made it. But as soon as they stepped into the hallway, they were swallowed whole. Their screams echoed, then cut off instantly. The doors slammed shut again, and then it was just me and Coach. We didn't speak, didn't move. The thing in the doorway lingered, its body twitching in jerky movements like it didn't belong in this world. Finally, it retreated back into the hallway. The doors closed. The gym was silent again. I don't know how long we sat there, maybe hours. Time didn't mean anything anymore. At some point, exhaustion pulled me under. My eyelids sagged. My head drooped forward. When I woke up, the gym was empty. No coach, no teammates, just me. The doors were wide open now, and in the hallways beyond, I heard footsteps, not mine. Heavy, uneven, getting closer. I grabbed my backpack and ran. I don't remember how I made it out of the school. I don't remember how I got home. But here's what I do remember. The next morning, when I told the principal what happened, she looked at me like I was crazy. "There was no lockdown last night," she said. "No practice either. The gym's been closed since last week." I swore I wasn't lying. I swore my teammates were gone. But when she pulled out the roster, their names weren't there, like they'd never existed at all. It's been 3 years since that night. I still wake up sweating, hearing that broken voice on the intercom. Sometimes, I swear I see tall shadows following me in parking lots, or faces pressed against my bedroom window glass, and sometimes when I close my eyes, I hear the announcement again, "Lockdown, this is not a drill."